happening? Happy Friday to you on a loaded edition of the Hoffman Show on Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app with super producer Anthony Haney. I'm Craig Hoffman. We got a ton of guests coming up starting at 4:30 with Bruce Feldman of The Athletic and Fox Sports. Great chat about, we actually taped that a little earlier today, which some of you know from Twitter, but Bruce really loved what the Commanders did in the draft, and he has an outstanding Mike Sainristil story that you will hear coming up at 4:30. Clinton Yates later in the show. Spiro Dedes returns to the show. NBA playoffs, always great to have Spiro with us. He was on the call of the Bucks game last night, but and the other thing that I love about Spiro is, I don't know if you know this, so Spiro does all the TV stuff now, CBS for the NFL, TNT for the NBA, but his local jobs before he made it big doing national stuff exclusively, he was the play-by-play voice of the Lakers and the Knicks. Yeah.
And the Knicks?
Yeah, not at the same time. Like he went one and then the other.
Okay.
You're like, how does he do that? Yeah, no, he would time travel to games. No, but he understands those markets really, really well. He grew up in New York. I believe he lives in LA now, and he's been the play-by-play voice of both teams. And all of a sudden, you see two of the NBA's marquee franchises going in opposite directions. We'll talk about the Knicks' big win over the Sixers and kind of what it means for Philly in a little bit here. But we want to start with the news of the day, which is the Lakers have fired Darvin Ham. And this is not surprising. Apparently it got really bad during the season, which is super wild to me. Just the lack of relationships for players and coaches seemingly in the NBA. Like, I think the good ones are so good at that. And because that's really what great coaching is, right? Great coaching is the ability to build relationships. And I think that there is no greater example in quote form of this than recently, like there may be other great ones out there, but like recently, of all people, Dan Quinn said, we need to get to know these guys because we can only coach them to the depth of our relationship as people. And to have that kind of understanding of what it takes to really connect with someone. And Logan has talked about this a lot throughout the draft process for the Commanders, that you've got to be able to connect with and care for players that you coach if you want to get the best out of them, because that's gonna make it so you don't have to fight human nature. So that you as a coach will give everything to that player because you just like them. And so that's not to say that every coach and player need to be best friends, but to watch some of the premier players in the league and some of these teams that hire these coaches consistently hire men who are just apparently incapable or bad at doing this, or misread because maybe Darvin Ham is good at that, but he's not good at it with LeBron and AD. So is that a LeBron and AD issue? It might be. You know, I love LeBron, maybe not as much as Ant does, but quite a bit. He's been one of my favorite players for the entirety of his career. I just have so much appreciation for who he is and what he's done and his basketball IQ and all of that. But he hasn't always gotten along well with coaches. There has been some struggle. And I do wonder sometimes if it's because the coach isn't up to his IQ. Like, that's the hard part about coaching LeBron James. And it's frankly why I think J.J. Redick's name keeps getting thrown around for these head coaching jobs. Like, one, I think J.J. has shown an ability to connect with people on his podcast that is easily digestible, that you can see. Now, handling all the administrative stuff and whatever else goes into an NBA head coach, like, I'm not going to be like, yep, J.J. Redick ready to go from the broadcast booth to a coach. But he does feel like he has potential, that Steve Kerr-esque potential to do that, although Kerr was a general manager before he ever took a coaching job, so that does feel relevant. Although he did go straight from the broadcast booth to the GM job and did an all right job in Phoenix. Anyway, like LeBron in some ways, I know this is kind of, people have said this is a joke, Ant, but like in some ways this podcast that LeBron and JJ have done together feels like a tryout for JJ. hey, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk basketball and we're going to talk X's and O's and we're going to see if we connect and if you're up to my level. And I think part of the reason JJ's name is in the mix in LA as it is in Charlotte and in other places, we'll see if he's in the mix here, is because he passes that test. Like LeBron, and that's really important for LeBron, even more so than in other places because he's the smartest basketball player in the whole league and he's seen everything in 20 years. Like, can you actually teach me something? Can we collaborate here? But I think the thing is with the Lakers, and what I think like there's a huge contrast in like the Lakers and the Knicks right now is the Lakers did the same dumb thing they did at the end of Kobe, which is they're just like, yeah, dude, whatever you want. Instead of acting like a competent organization to build a team. To be like, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do what's best for the team. And I promise you, at the end of the year, you're going to like that better. Now, there are sacrifices you have to make when you're trying to win right now. There's some of that. But, like, the mismanagement of the Lakers roster is just nuts. And that's also not terribly surprising. Like, Rob Pelinka was a very good agent. I don't think he'd have a GM job in another place that wasn't LA. And, like, Jeannie Buss, their ability to, like, make life great for stars and acquire stars has been good, and she's been a part of that. But, like, there's a lot of other issues there with Lakers ownership. And just the consistent empowering of the wrong people in that franchise since Dr. Buss passed is equal parts, I would say, sad and pathetic. And to see the end years of LeBron James wasted when he's still this freaking good because they can't figure out the right person to coach him. They probably should have never fired Vogel. He might have been the right person. And to just not do smart basketball stuff and chase headlines is frankly embarrassing. And it's embarrassing for them, and it's sad for the rest of us who would like to see the end years of LeBron James spent with a competent organization and him competing for championships.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said the mismanagement of the roster is embarrassing. I think last year after you get swept by the Nuggets, you do nothing in the offseason to address the reason you lost to the Nuggets, which was you had nobody to defend Nikola Jokic. When you play them in the bubble in 2020, you had bodies to throw at him. You had Dwight Howard, you had AD, and they had JaVale McGee as well. And I just feel like there are guys out there on the market. There are people you could have traded for during the season because eventually, roads were going to cross where you had to play the Denver Nuggets. And I just don't think the roster itself was good enough. They struggled to start the season shooting the ball. As the season went on, I guess they got a little bit better, but still they were too inconsistent.
But this is also what happens, right, when you don't have a coach with a clear vision and an organizational alignment. Like, this is the thing that the Wizards are trying to get, and I give Michael Winger a ton of credit for this, is he's like, we need to be aligned. We're going to, from the front office, establish a style of play. We have benchmarks that we need to hit. And, like, Oklahoma City is the model here, right? And obviously Winger and Dawkins come from this. Oklahoma City says, we are going to play a certain way. We're going to bend within our principles to the talent that we have, which is interesting because for such an analytics-driven group, their superstar is a guy who doesn't shoot a ton of threes in SGA. But they figured out, be like, okay, well, what are your best shots? Let's make sure we get you them. Let's make sure that you're surrounded by guys that can get these threes for us, that can do the things that we know win basketball games. And the Lakers as an organization lack a basketball vision. What are you as a basketball team? We're LeBron James, AD, and figure it out. And when you don't have a vision, it's hard to find the right coach to implement that vision. The vision changes with the coach, and it really shouldn't because the players are the same. And you get this kind of mismanagement. So it is the roster, right? Like you're saying, they didn't have the pieces. Like there's some fundamental things you have to do if you want to win in the Western Conference, which means going through Denver, exactly like you said. And they didn't have the personnel, but they also didn't have a vision of like what an alternate path was. Like, okay, fine, we're not going to go chasing just getting a bunch of Jokic stoppers. How are we going to beat them? We're going to hope that AD and LeBron stay healthy and they look like it's 2019. Newsflash. It's 2024. They ain't walking through that door as we can Patino game it here.
But how much of the blame do you think Darvin Ham was for, the Lakers' first-round exit? Or would you more so put it on Rob Pelinka, Jeannie Buss, and the front office for real, because of their lack of vision, their lack of being on the same
I think part of it is you hire Ham. Like, that's part of your lack of vision. Was he the right guy for the job in the first place? Should you have fired Frank Vogel?
Yeah.
I don't like, and I do like. This is kind of the Milwaukee thing too, right? Like, Milwaukee moved on from Bud and hired Adrian Griffin apparently because that's what Giannis wanted. Like, I don't think you needed to fire Mike Budenholzer, and they should have just went to Giannis and been like, "Hey, we're not firing Bud. What else do you want to change? Like, what conversations do we need to facilitate to get everyone on the same page?" But this guy's an amazing coach. We win 60 games every year. We've won a title. He's like, yeah, we need to be better in the playoffs. And like, I didn't think firing Bud was outrageous. I didn't agree with it, but I didn't think it was outrageous. But it goes to like the thing that Barkley said the other night, right? Like, he wanted to do it as a shot at Kendrick Perkins, which I kind of chuckle at because I think sometimes Perk's basketball analysis is wild. But Chuck was like, all these dudes just want to blame everything on the players, and it's all LeBron's fault. It's all AD's fault. It's all this guy's fault. It's all that guy's fault. Or sorry, they want to blame it on the coaches and say it's never those guys' fault. Like, it's on the players. So like, there's some of his too where like some of this is on LeBron because he either soft power, if you will, threats, veiled threats, leaked reports from people in his camp, whatever, or direct like conversations with Jeannie Buss or Rob Pelinka or whoever is like, I want things this way. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember off the top of my head, and every Lakers fan is probably screaming at the radio right now. They're like, you idiot. Of course it was XYZ. But I don't remember at the time like it being like LeBron wants Vogel out. I'm sure he was like, it was one of those where I feel like it was reported like LeBron didn't step up to save him kind of deal. But I don't feel like they had to fire Frank Vogel, and they shouldn't have. Because Frank Vogel's a good coach.
I think it's the same thing that's going on in Phoenix right now. Like, people are just quick to blame Vogel, to be honest. Like, somebody
their
has
roster
to be
sucks.
Yeah, somebody has to be the scapegoat. Somebody got to take the fall.
Matt Ishbia should be the fall guy, the owner.
Did you hear what he said today?
Was it today, or did he say something else today?
He said, yes, something today.
What did he say today?
Where he was no, it was actually yesterday.
When he was like 29 other teams would like our roster?
Yeah, and we don't have to do anything to change anything about our roster. And
I'm so happy he thinks that, because that guy's terrible and I want him to suffer.
It's ridiculous.
Insane. Well, now we're already should we just keep going on NBA stuff here? Or should we take a quick break before we get to Feldman? Let's quick break it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take a quick break, come back. We'll talk about the game itself last night. Knicks, Sixers. We can touch on the Bucks' big win as well. Or sorry, the Bucks loss, Pacers' big win as well. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live on the Free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube, too, at the Team 980, where I realized, Anthony, I was way slouched down in my chair. I look like a very not tall person. Can't be doing that.
And now you are sitting upright.
Sitting tall. Sitting properly in the chair. Good day. I don't know. It's a Friday. We're just doing what we can, kids. It's the Hoffman Show. I'm Craig. He's Anthony. Thanks for joining us. This is what we do. Talking a little NBA playoffs, and then our guy Bruce Feldman is going to join us coming up at 4:30. Talk about the Commanders draft. Really good stuff with Bruce on deck. Of course, college football writer for The Athletic. Got a great Mike Sainristil story, amongst other things, on tap there. But last night, and literally the most exciting series we've seen in recent, if not any, NBA playoff history, concluded. There is just some amazing stats, and probably the easiest one to understand, and not that any of them are particularly difficult, but the easiest one to understand is that the final score in the series was Knicks 650, Sixers 649. And that's really, truly what it was. The Knicks ultimately pull out the 6-game series win, so the only score that matters is 4-2. Jalen Brunson, 41 points in the finale. And I'm just, like, if I'm the Sixers, I'm obviously ticked off. But I also realized that we played a really good team that close with maybe a 75% Joel Embiid. A 75% Joel Embiid, by the way, who had 39 points and 13 rebounds last night. He also had a 50-piece one game in this series. And if I'm the Knicks, I'm like, I don't care. We beat you guys. You have, the reigning, until they name a new one, MVP. He is playing at an everything level, and we have this guy in Jalen Brunson who seems to be able to lead us wherever we want to go. And I just, there's so many different things to talk about here, but I think because we're short on time, let's just focus on Brunson. I can't believe he's this good. Like, we've been watching it for years, and like we saw him in that series with Dallas a bunch of years ago, where like everyone's like, "Whoa, this dude's pretty good sidekick to Luka," but this is nuts. And then everyone's like, the Knicks are going to max him in the, and he's going to go to New York because that's where his dad's, an assistant coach and the whole deal. And if you're we're all kind of laughing at the Knicks, be like, this is your guy. And joke's on us, man. Like, the Knicks didn't star chase. They chased a dude who's way better at basketball than any of us could have imagined.
Yeah, he's just a winner. Like, that's what he does. And if you think back to, a couple of years ago when he signed his contract with the Knicks, what they got in him was a bargain of a deal. 4 years, $104 million. And,
Crazy.
he's definitely outplayed that contract. And I think, that the injury to Julius Randle has definitely allowed him to, blossom into this guy. So, next year, like, they're doing all this without Julius Randle. And I feel like, to an extent, they're relying on him so much. I hope it doesn't, burn him out too much as the playoffs continue. But I'm just thinking about 2025, 2026, years down the road, where he's actually going to have another guy to go out there and, get buckets with him. You can't do all this on your own.
Well,
I mean, LeBron has been able to do it.
Yeah, but like, that's the thing is, like, the way they play, is he on his own? And, like, this goes to something that I think is really interesting, which is the makeup of the team. The fact that he's got two of his college teammates who are bona fide NBA players. It's not like the buddy system, but like, they know how to win together. Mm-hmm. And there's just a confidence and kind of a leveling that happens there, where it's not like, oh, Jalen Brunson, the superstar. Like, everybody knows. But like, if you're Josh Hart and you're Dante DiVincenzo, you're like, no, that's Jalen, my roommate from college. Right? Like, that's literally their podcast, Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson. What a risk that is, putting a microphone in front of Josh Hart once a week too, by the way. But like, it's called the Roommates Show because that's what they were. And like, that just is going to allow for a level of cohesion on a team that is different than we just talked about with the Lakers, like the lack of cohesion organizationally, nevertheless in the locker room. Like, if you are so like your best players that approachable, like that is a barrier to success that is just not going to be there for this team. And anybody who comes in that locker room, like Jalen's the alpha.
Mm-hmm.
And Jalen's like, these are my boys. And his boys are, role players. So everyone else is just kind of on the same level. And I mean, especially under a coach. And I think the last piece of that is Tibbs, right? Is because Tibbs is like, there's no doubt who's in charge. Jalen's, I'm sure, a great leader. Josh Hart's a great leader. DiVincenzo's like won a championship with the Bucks. There's a lot of great guys in that locker room, but Tibbs is in charge, and like that works because of the mesh of personalities. Nevertheless, the mesh of skill sets that they have.
Yeah, and I didn't necessarily mean like he's out there by himself, but I look at some of the other teams that have went on to win NBA Finals and things of that. The Nuggets. I think if you look at them, they have two legitimate playmakers, and then they have superb role players. And I think DiVincenzo, Hart, great role players. I think Jalen Brunson, you just need that one more guy. So it might be Julius. Yeah.
Or someone, frankly, better than Randall. But
yeah, that too.
There's that. But I do think that's going to be the interesting thing, right? Is like if they get matched up with the Celtics eventually, which they presumably will to get to the finals.
Yeah.
And Drew Holiday goes all Drew Holiday on Jalen Brunson. Where do the points come from?
Exactly.
And that's why I still don't ultimately believe in them. But I like this Knicks team more than I've liked any other Knicks team I can think of in recent memory.
Yep.
Because the Knicks are just generally annoying. It's not even the Knicks' fault. It's like they're fans. But like you watch this team play and you're like, oh, they play really hard and they play the right way and they're tough and they're gritty. And like, if I say I like the things I like about basketball, how do I not like them? We talk more about the Sixers next week. We'll see if they do anything. Obviously, they're in year one of Nick Nurse, and they have a ton of cap space. So they're a team that is going to be looking to add a very interesting time in their the process timeline, if you will, is now Embiid getting closer and closer to 30 with every passing day. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And actually, wait, hold on. Are we doing Yates next? Feldman at 5, I think, is what we're doing. Because then Spiro's going to join us at 6, and Sam Monson from PFF at 5:30. So, yeah, that's what we're doing next. Clinton Yates is going to join us next. We'll talk with Clinton about the Colorado story. We touched on it a little bit earlier in this week, but the latest out of Boulder with Deion Sanders. And then we will talk with him about some of the NBA stuff as well. So Yates joins us for a couple of segments. Next, it's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. It's Friday. Hell yeah. And that means Clinton Yates is with us. What's up, dude?
What's going on, man? How have you been this week? What's new?
This week, honestly, has been weird because we've been in such this pressure cooker leading up to the draft. And then all of a sudden the pressure released and we're like, oh, what else is going on? It's like you stick your head up out of the war trench. And here we are. There's playoffs happening. There's players that have been selected. People like most of them. It's weird.
Very odd feeling this time of year to have hope in gridiron. So that's pretty cool. You were there. You went, right?
Yes. Also, yes, catching my breath literally from the travel and just the slog of endless. Like, look, I'm not complaining. This is a great gig. I get to talk about football and other stuff. But like it is a lot. It was a very intense couple of weeks. So yeah, getting back from Detroit last week and kind of catching my breath from all that. Yeah, it's been nice. How's ESPN Daily been this week?
Things are good. I just got through talking to my man Justin Tinsley, who, if you're not familiar with his work, wrote an entire book about Biggie Smalls, the Notorious B.I.G., and he's got a story out today called The Quiet King of New York, referring to Jalen Brunson. And if you know anything about hip-hop and gangster movies, those link in the sports psyche of New York City. So go check that out at Anscape.
Nice. So we'll talk about Brunson and the Knicks Sixers series here in a few minutes as that's wrapped up with more heroics from him last night. But I want to start talking about a topic that you and I have actually talked about quite a bit over the last year as Deion's gone to Colorado, and there's been varying stories that have popped up that have been topics of discussion in shows like this. And The Athletic put out this story this week, which kind of sparked all of prime discussion, where they profiled a lot of the players who have left and in fact tracked them, which was the first time anyone had really done that. And there's then kind of the circle of reaction where Deion and his son are, atting dudes on Twitter, including some of the former players. And, people are getting takes off. That's as much setup as I'm going to give. I don't want to lead you in any direction. What's your reaction to this latest round of Deion Sanders' story?
There's a couple of things here at play. Number one of which is I commend The Athletic for this journalistic route, following guys who are arguably a part of the most famous transfer class in the history of college football. Just makes sense from a storytelling standpoint. However, I would be really interested to see, in addition, if you did this for every, let's just say, Power 4 program, what kind of a readout would you get on said head coach? And I say all that to set this point up. Getting crapped on as a player is a fundamental part of what college football is, whether we like it or not. You can go back to guys yelling things like, it's Division I football. If you don't like it, play intramurals, brother, or whatever. And like the cutthroat nature of how the game operates at that level is not particular to Deion. I need people to understand that. However, when you add the Sanders element in terms of everything happening in front of cameras, everything happening on social media, everybody knowing who you are, even though you are not necessarily a big-time player, well then, once that's bisected with the Gen Z element, you've got yourself an actual problem. And the reason I think you've got yourself an actual problem, Craig, is not just because it's people think it should be beneath him to be out here jawing with guys on the bird like I was 10 years ago, you know what I'm saying, sitting in a newsroom, but because it doesn't help be a big thing. I feel like the modern athlete looks at a situation like Colorado's, and I'm not using Colorado specifically. I could use schools, coaches who think they're a big deal, who have programs on the rise that are very visible as a result of God knows what recently in their history. And players say, I'm not dealing with that. Not necessarily definitively going to play on Sundays, or if I don't particularly care to have my ego destroyed, I'm just not doing it. So while I do think there is a certain level of showman diplomacy in what him and Shador have been doing, I ultimately think the largest problem, if I'm a Buffaloes fan, is that, you don't know who you're turning away with this type of approach as far as other recruits are concerned that might have considered
fan, particularly, like I'm not a fan, right? But like I look
No, I get it.
Football edited as well, which is this is not a new problem. Sanders at college football coaches, and it is the fundamental problem with college sports. People involved seem to forget who the children and who the adults are. And there should be some responsibility incumbent on the adults, which in this case is Deion Sanders as the, what is he, in his 50s year old coach of a program. And by the way, the athletic director and the school president and the other folks at Colorado around them to act like adults when 20-year-olds act like 20-year-olds. Like, we're old enough to know that 20 years old, you're old enough to know a lot of things, but you're not that old. You are still very much a child. And the childishness, if you will, of like Deion and some other folks at Colorado that are supposed to be adults, to me, like, that's where the problem is. And that's why, like, Deion, I think, has made a huge mistake here and is in the wrong here, is because if the kids want to say stuff, they're kids. You're Deion Sanders. You're a Hall of Famer. You're also an adult. Just keep it moving forward, man.
Don't get me wrong. This is not how I would run my program, proverbially. But I also do think that if all of the conversations that every head coach had with a kid that they were running out of their program was aired publicly, you might think poorly of a lot of different head coaches. And
trust me, I do.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And your point is
right.
Your point is well taken, which is that this is not a Deion problem. But if Deion is going to put himself in a position as being the one we gaze upon, then yeah, you're going to take a little bit more scrutiny for it. And so there's a couple more things at play here that I think do matter in this scenario that I think are easy to kind of forget. Number one, Colorado is moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. And that sounds like it doesn't matter, but I do think there is a large element of Coach Prime here that's feeling a little pressure, way more so than anything that existed beforehand. You can't slide by with 4 wins these days. You can't come out and get dump trucked by 4 touchdowns by a bunch of conference opponents and expect people not to laugh at you in your face. I think they know as a program, they had 53 transfers coming in from the previous year to last. That was the most ever in NCAA history. They're in the 40s this year, Craig, because they moved from 1 win to 4. They know they've got to get better, and they don't have any shame in that. Their bedside manner, if you will, probably not great with it, but I think there is a legitimate competitive pressure that is changing the outward communicative way that Prime is approaching this. And I think that probably he might not even realize that as much as anybody because he's never been in this position in his life, even though he can pretty much do anything.
Clint Yates with us on the Hoffman Show. And in 6 minutes, we've gotten to the core crux of what I think is the issue, like the fundamental question here, which is in college sports, given that they are college kids going to college, how much does winning matter? Not that we shouldn't try to lose, but like, what do we prioritize? Do we prioritize the winning? Or if a kid committed to your school with the intention of going there, and say the kid's been there 1 year and has made a bunch of friends and likes being a Colorado student, like, how seriously are we going to take the student athlete thing? And I'm asking that in a genuine way, not as in like an old curmudgeonly, like, oh, they're supposed to be students, but like there is an element to like these are young people that we are disrupting their lives over wins of like winning and losing football games. And if a guy, that doesn't mean he has to play. That doesn't mean Deion has to give him snaps and minutes and the whole deal. But at the end of the day, like if a kid says, hey, I really like it here. I've got a great support because I like my major. I like my professors. Like I'm onto something, and I'm not a guy who's going to play in the NFL anyway. Like that dude should get to stay at the end of the roster. And like, I just, that's like a fundamental thing for me. And the ruthlessness and the cutthroatness. And again, this is not a Deion problem. This is a college football problem that is being shown through Deion taking it as far as anyone's ever taken it. Because you just mentioned these are record number of transfers. But like that to me is at the core of the fundamental thing here that we're talking about is like, what are we actually valuing in college sports while acknowledging it's also a billion-dollar business that relies on the competition?
This is the question I tried to answer when I was there at the end of the season last year for a couple games. When I was there at the beginning of the season for a couple games, it was more so, oh my God, what are we looking at? This is fantastic. Towards the end of the season, it was very different. And, you know, it's funny that you mentioned the old guy, oh, there must be student athletes. Well, there's another old guy stance that is also very prevalent, but is on the opposite side of the coin, which is win at all costs. And I think that Colorado is still trying to figure that out, as is Deion. I'm with you, Gregory. If you create an experience where people just plain like being there, a la the 27,000 who showed up in the rain to watch a glorified practice at Folsom Field, a 100-year-old facility, on some level, you've already won, because people caring in Boulder at all is the victory. Now, the outside pressures, in order to rack up wins so that people can look at you and say, oh, wow, they've actually got some trophies, that's a different matter. Let us not forget, Colorado is a school with actual national championships. The humans that played on those teams are around. One of those humans played on the Washington football team and is very well known. Excuse me. And so in general, it's just kind of like they still have to figure that out for themselves. What doesn't help is pissing people off in the interim by doing things like unnecessarily shaming guys in public. I just don't think it helps. I don't have a huge issue with it. If I was a parent, I'd probably feel pretty differently about it, but it's garden variety college football chicanery. It happens.
Is the last part of this, right? Is like, if you're going to go and talk about how you're taking care of kids and some of the stuff that Deion says, and you're tweeting out Jesus quotes every morning, and like, you want to be that guy, like, if I'm a parent of a kid who's on the receiving end of this, I'm calling him and be like, hey, I'm an adult here. You're an adult here. Why'd you treat my kid like this? Like, you told me, or you took over for a coach that told me that you would take care of my kid. Like, that's what every recruiting pitch is. Like, to be very, I think what you said off the top is true. If you did this kind of story at almost any school, you'd get versions of this. But if you don't even have a personal relationship, and I realize it's hard with 100 guys, but like, the first one-on-one conversation you have is to be like, you suck, leave. Like, what are you doing there?
Yeah.
It's no way to be. And at some point, I mean, I used to, this is like a personal thing, but like, it's what actually used to grind my gears about Boeheim at Syracuse. He treated student reporters poorly for sport on purpose. And I'm like, you're employed by the university. And I realize that I have a press credential right now, or my colleague has. I was never, thankfully, on the receiving end of one of those, but like, I had friends who were, and it's like, we are students right now. Are we going to nail this? No, we're students, but you work here. Like, you're the highest paid employee of said academic institution of higher learning. You have a responsibility to not be bad to the students. They're still in this model where the student, or the student and the athlete are tied together. I think that responsibility still exists. If you want to make some other minor league football, fine, but it's still college football, and like, we have to at least pretend.
I totally agree. And on top of that, don't think that the pressure from within the university isn't going to become very real very soon. The person I was referring to that has played in the city within which you broadcast is, of course, Michael Westbrook. And I talked to him, I remember after, I can't remember which game it was after. It was early on in the season. And I said, well, you know, what are expectations? He said, expectations? He says, bruh, look up on the wall. I was on that team. The ceiling is right there. This is not some shot in the dark situation. People remember. And so I do think that from a performance standpoint, never mind a presentation one, there is going to be a lot more pressure this year on Deion. And quite frankly, I think that's a good thing. That's what makes this fun, is that sometimes it's not just about whether or not you're winning and losing. It's about how everybody feels about it. And that's why we love sports.
No doubt. Clint Yates with us here on the Hoffman Show. Quick break, come back, talk a little hoops next on the Team 980. on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Clinton Yates, nice enough to stay with us for one more segment here on a Friday. Switching gears to the hardwood, a very sportscastery phrase there, Clinton. I'm just doing local sports TV in 1987. To the hardwood now, where last night, Jalen Brunson and the Knicks, with his 41 points, dispatched of the Philadelphia 76ers.
First of all, hold on. We're not gonna talk about the memory of our guy Steve Buckhantz. He was never that corny. All right, when he was on Home Team Sports,
absolutely
back
not
in
a
the day.
Buckhantz reference.
I'm just
that was someone way worse
point.
than Steve Buckhantz.
I'm making the point. If Buck, you're listening, I want you to know that we knew you were a cut above. We knew that. Craig is not making fun of you. He's talking about everybody else.
Yeah, clearly everybody else. No, but Brunson, awesome last night as Maxey and company and Embiid and company just run out of gas. This was Haberstro earlier. There's like an excitement rating that someone has come up with, one of the analytics, and it's basically like how often do lead changes happen, and then you can kind of cross chart that with comeback probabilities. And like this series is just an outlier in every way of how exciting it was. I think the point total in the series is 650 to 649 by the end of it. So just a remarkable series, and one that feels unlikely because, you know, when the Knicks lost Julius Randle on the show, we took them out of like whatever tier we had them in our tier rankings. We're like, oh, move them down a spot. How surprised are you that we are here where the Knicks move on and the Sixers are yet again going home before second round?
So there's a couple things I want to cite here, Craig. Number one is a stat from my man Tim Bontemps, Good Times, ESPN national NBA writer, and he pointed out to me, he said there have been 5 total times in NBA history in which a team down 5 points with 30 seconds to play has won the game. It's only happened 3 times in the last 25 years. It's happened twice in the last series between the same 2 teams, Craig. You want to talk about excitement rating. That's as big as it gets, literally and statistically. So there's that. Number 2 is I kind of, but James, a way to put together in a fashion in the league these days that I enjoy. Leon Rose, former agent, is a guy that's put that squad together. He's stuck with the sort of old school coach in Tibbs. And I really think there is a very strange value to having a bunch of national championship players from the same team on the same team. There is clear value in the way that they play. I'm not saying every team can put themselves together this way. I'm not for. Think of a modern NBA in which half the battle for these franchises is figuring out how are we even doing this besides just making stabs in the dark. I am as impressed by the roster construction of the Knicks as I am with the actual performance of the team. I know you like to get into this kind of stuff, Craig. Does that make sense to you?
No, the element is fascinating, especially as we look at what the Wizards are doing right now. If we want to take the local angle, I'm really fascinated how Winger and Dawkins are going to do this. And I know that they value, and look, I just went through the whole thoughts on team building have been dramatically sharpened by this NFL draft process. Like watching Adam Peters do his job has made me think harder about this than any other time in my career. And then obviously we're going to then test a lot of these theories and how much of them cross over to basketball over the next couple of months here with what Michael Winger and Will Dawkins do with the Wizards. And I think one thing that I really have come to think about especially when it comes to the NBA is like the pieces need to be more than the sum of the parts. Like Dante DiVincenzo is a good player. Him with Jalen Brunson is elevated. They know how to play together and they complement each other's skill sets. And Josh Hart, the same thing. They also just give each other confidence in a way because they're so familiar and they're such great friends. Like that is something that can go very poorly. Like you don't want a buddy system where the inmates are running the asylum, but you pair a bunch of buddies who are also like super duper professional with Tom Thibodeau and no one's running the asylum but Tibbs. Like that's going to work out. But there's also just an undeniable talent element that Jalen Brunson is way freaking better at basketball than any of us ever could have imagined when he was at Villanova. Like, dude's his size without his athletic prowess in terms of vertical jump, in terms of speed, even though he is kind of jittery and quick. They're not supposed to be able to drop 40 regularly in the playoffs, Clinton. And yet here we are. He does it every.
It's a throwback, Craig. If this were 20 years ago, you wouldn't be surprised that a guy like a Jalen Brunson was that good. Since we got to the form where every single player we considered to be quality and necessary was a 6'9" wing with a 7'2" wingspan who could shoot the three and also post up, we sort of forgot about, I hate to say this word, the hoopers. You know what I'm saying? And there's a big element of Brunson, that kid who is a NBA baller's son, grows up around a team. East Coast guy, for lack of a better term. There is a style of play in the league that is still available if you are good. And Brunson, with that team, is showcasing it. And nothing made it more clear than when my man hit a bucket and then stared in the stands at his championship banners in Philadelphia, reminding people that he is a winning basketball player. That, to me, was seen. I was talking to Justin Tinsley for ESPN Daily. He's doing a story. He done the story about Brunson. Like, my boy, what is this guy doing? He said, I think he's reminding them, you still love me. You never can. Winning player that Brunson has, well beyond a skill set that I think is really difficult to find when you're trying to build an NBA team. I look at a guy like, I don't know, Bradley Beal in Phoenix. That's the kind of attitude you're getting out of that player? You trying to tell me that between 1, 2, and 3 and their top 3 guys, they don't have more talent? But DiVincenzo, Hart, and Brunson are way more than 3 guys I'd rather have if I'm picking on a playground pick 'em based on what I've seen in the first round of the playoffs. That's crazy. You got to be pretty smart to figure out how to make that work. And I think there's a lot more teams that do not, quite frankly, the sort of developmental resources to find a Booker or a Durant or whoever all the time. You got to get closer to a Knicks model. You got to get guys that like each other, guys that are sort of before they are just getting theirs. And the Knicks have done a tremendous job with it, and their fan base has showed up and supported it. That the NBA is better with the Knicks when they're good, not necessarily, but this team, the NBA is better now that they're playing.
No doubt. And look, it's got to be more than guys liking each other. The Wizards actually really liked each other this year. They were terrible at NBA basketball. And like, there is some mix of both. I think that's the thing. It's a mix of both. And to kind of end this on a quote from Adam Peters, when he talked about his pre-draft process, he's like, look, at the end of the day, we're people scouting people, which means there's going to be biases. There's going to be personality dynamics. But like, if you lean into that and you know what you're looking for on the human side, and then you match that with the tape, for instance, a phrase used much more in football than basketball, but same thing applies, then that's how you can maybe predict that you're going to get a Jalen Brunson or like a Giannis, right? Like there's all this raw skill, and it's like, how is he going to develop? It's like, I think of some of the things that I've heard Adam Peters say about some of the draft picks for the Commanders, and it's like, I like that they had to earn everything. He said that specifically about Jaden Daniels. He's like, I like that kid's had to earn everything, that he had to show up at 5 a.m., because he's going to work in a way that a lot of other guys won't. And you think of Giannis's story and like what Jaden went through, got nothing on Giannis. Like that dude was, what his family went through, like kind of trying to avoid Greek immigration, getting deported after escaping, Nigeria. Like it is nuts. And then I think he and his brother took like a 2-hour train every day to like this basketball facility. Like that dude had to earn what he now would consider like, that's small potatoes. That's nothing. And to know that work ethic existed within him and that raw talent makes, in hindsight, Giannis's rise to the level that he is, best players on the planet, way, way more predictable. So it's the match of given all of it that has to come together, and you have to get it right. And if you do, that's how you find the diamond in the rough, because everybody can scout LeBron James. What can you do in a draft, for instance, like the Wizards are about to have to do, and what is considered the worst draft in 20 years? Can you find the one gem in it?
They call that, Gregory, building a culture, something that has been bereft of decades.
Yeah. That was a mic drop. Clinton Yates, everybody.
Have a great weekend, Gregory.
You too. I was going to let you be done, but we'll be right back. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. It's a football hour. Sam Monson, Pro Football Focus, coming up at 5:30. And also a little sneak. I need some advice coming up after we talk with Bruce Feldman in just a moment. Running a half marathon on Sunday, so any runners out there that have the thing they wish they would have known for their first half marathon, you can give us a call in about 15 minutes. But right now, it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in, Not My Beat.
It is our pleasure to welcome back to the show The Athletic's Bruce Feldman. Wrote a great piece wrapping up his winners and losers, if you will, of the NFL draft, and had the Commanders as a team whose draft he really liked. Bruce, appreciate your time as always, and let's dive right in. What did you like so much about what Adam Peters did in his first draft in charge in Washington?
You know, I think the first and foremost is a statement, but I think he drafted some, terrific college football players first and foremost, and guys who are super productive and guys who I think translate well to the NFL. I mean, you start with the Heisman Trophy winner, Jaden Daniels, who got better and better and better throughout his career. He's a guy, coaches are very effusive about how he plays, what they see from him character-wise. I think it's going to be a good fit with Cliff Kingsbury, and I'm excited to see what he can do there in Washington. Obviously, he has some good weapons, with Terry McLaurin and John Dotson and Zach Ertz, and I think they added to that with Ben Sinnott from K-State, who's very talented and really underrated, and I think that's a lot to work with a really dynamic quarterback who is a passer first, but is so dangerous as a runner as well.
So, Bruce, obviously, for those that don't know you, they're missing out on great college football coverage, but Bruce covers college football during the year, and obviously the worlds merged during the draft. And we want to kind of circle back to that first part, that dust statement, because it's not a dust statement. The idea of drafting like super productive guys in college. As you cover this, the draft being this, through the lens of someone who watches these guys play in college, have you been able to, over your career, like really have a formula or a way, whatever you want to call it, of picking out the guys you think will translate, that are productive at college, versus, hey, that's working in college, I don't know if that is going to translate into the NFL level?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a difference between like NFL open and college open when it comes to quarterbacks in terms of throwing a receiver, offense, how it translates. I mean, Jaden Daniels, I'll say this, the coaches, for people who saw like my draft confidential on The Athletic of, a few weeks ago, like, one thing that stood out to a lot of the coaches is, not a fair comparison because it's, an NFL MVP kind of quarterback, but is Lamar Jackson in terms of just being such a dangerous runner. Jaden's not as strong as Lamar, but dynamic runner. And the thing that coaches come back to is he's playing in the SEC. He is running away from really fast guys. Will he run away from everybody in the NFL? No, but will he run away from a lot of guys? This isn't like Tim Tebow running. This is a guy who is really dynamic now. He's not a huge frame guy. He's wiry still, and he's probably put on 40 pounds since he got to Arizona State. But he's got to make smarter. You look at some of these other guys. I mean, Johnny Newton from Illinois is a very disruptive defensive tackle. Everybody I know thinks he is going to be a big force for Washington in the NFL, and he's going to be a big problem for guards to try and block. You look at Mike Hussein still, the nickel, Michigan. Much to do with that program changing and getting to be a national title winner as any player that was there. I mean, he is a little undersized. There's no doubt about that, but he is so quick and instinctive. He blitzes well. He's a really good tackler. He's a ball hawk. I think he'll be a great addition to Washington. I mean, that translates, and I feel like it is I feel like it's just a group where you kind of look through and like, okay, there's other, Luke McCaffrey's going to be an interesting addition. Jordan McGee, I know scouts really liked him. Dominique Hampton has a lot of athleticism. This is a really, really good group that they added.
Yeah, a lot of guys that have that college production you talked about, but also the athletic upside where you wonder, like, are they even close to their best football yet? For a guy like Daniels, obviously his best football so far was last year, far and away. As someone who watched him from Arizona State through LSU, when did you start hearing stories out of that LSU program of some kind of light clicking on for him and that maybe they were on to something and that Jaden was on to something to have the kind of year that he ultimately had and that ended in the Heisman Trophy?
Really around this time last year, because I talked to some of the coaches I know there and some of the staff, and they were so effusive in his work ethic. He really embraced the VR technology that LSU staff had partnered with that was from an international group. And they feel like that made a big improvement in him and how he sees defenses. And he was really good at that. And he was accurate. He doesn't have the same level of juice in his arm that Penix has or that even Caleb has, but he has enough arm. And again, I think one thing that people like maybe hold against him a little bit is he had 2 first-round receivers he was throwing to, and he had a really good offensive line. There's a couple of potential high-round draft picks next year who are on that offensive line. But again, he was doing it against really talented defenses, and you just saw him continue to get better and better. Like, he was good at Arizona State, but he wasn't anywhere near like this. And he was playing in a program that was in disarray under Herm Edwards. It was such a mess. He got to LSU. It was Brian Kelly's first year, and he really kept them from, turned them into a team that could play for the SEC championship. And then he got better as a passer. I just, hats off to him because, I think a year ago at this time, no one was expecting him to be the top 5 draft pick. Maybe he'd be like a first 3 rounds guy because I think people like his athleticism and some of the other stuff that he brings. But just as a passer, he just blossomed.
Yeah, Bruce Feldman, of course, college football writer at The Athletic, is with us. His Draft Confidential is a must-read leading up to the draft, and then published a post-draft Draft Confidential with some of the drafts he liked, which included Washington. And in part, Bruce, a guy you already mentioned, because Adam Peters took your favorite player in this draft in Mike Sainristil. What's your favorite Mike Sainristil story from Michigan?
So 2 years ago, so Michigan had Urban Meyer famously 7-0 against Michigan in that the biggest rivalry game there, and it was 2021. Michigan finally knocks off Ohio State at Ann Arbor. Well, the next year, the game is at Ohio State. I think most Ohio State folks thought, it was really fluky. It was a snow game. It was this and that. They have going into the game. Ohio State has C.J. Stroud. Michigan has a first-year starting quarterback. Michigan is really banged up coming into the game. Blake Corum really was a non-factor. They had about 6 other players who were really banged up. And Michigan almost got blown out of the game in the first half. They were hanging around. And I'm on the sideline for Fox, and I'm, along with my colleague Tom Rinaldi, we're like just kind of out on the Michigan sideline, and I'm standing there, and it's, and the game is hanging in the balance, and I see Sainristil stand up on top of their bench, brings every Michigan defensive player, not just the starters, around him, and gives this impassioned speech. He's pointing at the Ohio State sideline from Michigan sideline. We know who they are. We're going to make them quit right now. And he is just, it's almost like a religious speech. Like, he is so amped up. And, even thinking about it now, hearing it, I'm like getting goosebumps. Like, this goes on and on. And from that point on, they dominated the second half and blew Ohio State out. And I remember telling that story on our podcast, like a few days later. It was one of the most surreal moments I've seen. I did sideline for a long time at Fox, of being on the sideline of college games, but in that moment. And so, I tweeted out a link to a story I did about Michigan, and in it is that speech. So for people who want to know why this guy is more than just a really terrific defensive back, why he is like off the charts intangibles, go look at my Twitter feed, find the link to that Mikey Sainristil speech and story, and you'll get it. You'll be like, okay, like I saw, because I posted it online. I noticed Commanders fan had said, man, he feels a lot like he could be the defensive Terry McLaurin.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, that's not a bad comparison, because like Terry McLaurin, again, like I remember being at Ohio State for some interviews for TV, and Ohio State had a great receiver room at that point with like great character guys. They were very rarely do you find like a team that's leadership group is the receiving room. But that group had Paris Campbell, it had McLaurin, it had another guy named Johnny Dixon. And I remember telling one of the staffers at Ohio State, I was like, man, they like, who else do you want to talk to? I was like, well, I want Johnny and I definitely want Paris, because I had dealt with them a bunch and I got to know both of them a little bit. And I remember one of them was like, look, if you like those guys, you'll love Terry. We'll get you Terry too. I said, okay, great. And I was like, man, if you're saying that, because I know how like genuine and sharp those other two guys are. And then obviously Terry McLaurin's been everything in that and then some, since he's been in the NFL. So again, that's probably whoever made it. I don't remember who the reader was, but yeah, I don't disagree with that comparison at all.
Yeah, it's something that I think a lot of us have said. It's because we're so familiar with Terry and what he does. I mean, I was on the beat and when he got drafted in 2019 still, and just remember that training camp distinctly, kind of being like, this guy was supposed to be the best special teams player in the draft. I don't know that he's ever going to play special teams for Washington. I think he's going to be their number one receiver. And sure enough, that's what happened. And I think the thing, Bruce, that I find so interesting and fascinating and exciting about that Sainristil story is he is like, he would have been in his first year as a corner at that point to gather the defense like that, because he was a receiver, as you well know. And then end of his first season, he's doing that, gathering the defense. I think it just speaks to how well respected he was within the room pretty instantly, and he's got that upside to continue growing as a corner because he's only been doing it for like 2 years.
Yeah, and coaches just loved him, and he just has like a spark about him. Like you see him walking around, and I've used this analogy before, where he looks like a grad student when he wears his glasses, like a law school student or something, because he's not very big.
Yeah.
He's really bright, but then you watch him on the field, and there's like a glow to him. He made great one-on-one tackles in space. He picked off a lot of passes. Like, it also in that game, by the way, in that Ohio State game, he makes perhaps the biggest play of the game, where Cade Stover, their big tight end, he's on him in the corner of the end zone, and he knocks the ball out of Cade Stover's hands and makes a play where it's a good throw, and he just makes a better play and saves a touchdown for them. And again, I cannot say enough good things about him.
You can read more good things from Bruce Feldman about Mike Sainristil, in fact, in The Athletic, and check out, of course, that link that he referenced on Twitter if you want to see and hear more about that speech he gave against Ohio State. Bruce, always great to catch up, man. Your insight is invaluable, and we appreciate you sharing it here on The Hoffman Show.
Oh, it's good to talk to you. I appreciate the time.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Can't stop this weekend till I hit 13.2, Ant. It's a lot of miles.
Look, I'm wishing you the best of luck, Craig.
You got any advice for me? You never run a half marathon, but that doesn't stop. People give advice on stuff they've never done all the time.
You know what I would tell you, Craig? Run, Craig, run. That's what I would tell you.
That's about it. Keep
pumping them arms. Also, is it still raining?
Well, so this is the dagger. We've been training this thing for months, and I've got a goal time. I'd like to finish sub 2 hour, and if it rains, I'm throwing that goal out the window. I just want to go out there and have fun, as much fun as you can have for running for 2+ hours. I'll probably maybe do like some airplanes. I don't know.
Going down the hills and things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, if it rains, it's going to suck because your shoes get real heavy and your shoes are waterlogged for 9 of 13 miles. Like, that's brutal, man. That's just so much extra weight you have to carry. I'm going to be in so much pain on Monday if that's the case.
Yeah.
And you're not going to reach your goal. But I'll have done it. I ran a half marathon. Yeah. So that's that. The fun part, though, I would say is happening right now. Because right now, I'm hyperhydrating and I'm carb loading. And we got 13 bagels yesterday morning as a household because Rachel's also running.
Ooh.
So we got 13 bagels delivered. I think we're down to 5.
Oh, I don't think you guys are eating enough. They should all be gone.
It's been like 36 hours. We got them yesterday morning.
That is a lot of bread. Good gracious.
Yeah, and that's not like that's the only thing. I just had a Pop-Tart for the first time in years.
Oh, my God.
I also found out that apparently the flavor of Pop-Tarts that we got, there's no dairy in them. I don't know what's in that topping, but it ain't milk, it ain't cream.
You got cookies and cream?
No, we got, I think it's strawberry.
Oh, okay.
I had a Pop-Tart,
yeah.
Drinking a lot of water, drinking a lot of electrolytes.
Oh.
And it's just like, hey, eat everything. Sweet. So this is a fun part.
What is going to be your post-race meal?
Probably more pasta. Like we're having pasta for dinner tonight, pasta for dinner tomorrow night. I think that or I'm going to want like a huge bagel sandwich. I would love to get, maybe we'll go to like somewhere and get pancakes.
Oh.
Because the race is at 7 in the morning.
IHOP.
So, but the problem is with like, again, the dairy allergy is such a killer because I can't do buttermilk pancakes.
Oh, that is
so like,
brutal.
I'll give him some love. I'll give him a free shout out. Silver Diner has these like oat milk protein pancakes.
Uh-huh.
That might be the play.
I wish there was a Cracker Barrel that was close by. They have very filling pancakes. Massive pancakes.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, maybe we'll just make some pancakes at home. We did that for one of our friends after they ran. We were like, come over after. We'll make pancakes. So maybe we'll make some pancakes.
That could be
eggs, bacon.
Yep.
Sounds delicious.
You're making me hungry right now.
Same. I'm definitely hungry right now. But yeah, if anybody's got any good knowledge, oh, that's right. Rachel is listening to the show. I did that for her. After she ran her half marathon, I made her pancakes. So maybe I'll make us some pancakes. But that involves me standing.
I was about to say your legs are gonna feel like noodles. I don't know if you'll
someone needs to be the pancake maker.
I wish I could, but I use butter when I make my pancakes.
We have butter in our house that is non-dairy. So vegan butter really doesn't taste that different from regular butter.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think, especially like when you cook. I'm sure there's some dairy snob that would be like, yes, it is. I'm a dairy farmer from Wisconsin, and I can tell the difference in all the butters. But I don't know. It doesn't really have that much of a difference to me. Anyway, we'll see how alive I am on Monday. See how bad I'm limping. But I just hope to enjoy it.
I can't wait.
And I really hope the forecast turns. I almost wanted to have Sheehan on the show to talk weather today.
Oh, man.
It's okay. But anybody that's got, maybe in 6 o'clock hour, after we talk to Spiro, we'll have someone come on, or people call in with their advice. Up next, though, Sam Monson, Pro Football Focus. I want to talk some Commanders draft, but I want to talk some like big picture draft stuff with him as well. Monson next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And it's our pleasure to welcome him from Pro Football Focus, Sam Monson. Sam, thanks for joining the show, man. What's up? How are you?
No problem. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I want to talk Commanders draft with you, but I also want to talk just like general draft strategy with you, because I think for me, this draft cycle was so informative. This is the deepest I've ever gone in the draft, covering a team that had the number 2 pick, and especially looking at quarterback. You just look at it deeper. And also covering competent people. You're like, oh, this matters, as opposed to the people that have been making the picks here in the past, namely Bruce Allen, when I was on the beat back from 2015 to 2019 for me. So when you think about like what the Commanders did draft wide, what are the things that you see in it that you go like, oh, this is reminiscent of what Adam Peters has done before in San Francisco, or what they did in Denver when he was there, New England when he was there, that you're like, I see the good team building here, presuming that you see good team building there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they chose to go quarterback at the top of the draft. There didn't seem to be much of a chance that they were going to do anything other than that. I think New England was the team that maybe could have elected to go in a different direction and trade out of that pick and maybe build the infrastructure first. Washington was starting from a better point of view, certainly in terms of receiving help, so they could talk themselves into the quarterback and succeed right away. But then really, you look at the first sort of 5 picks, they just started picking off value and solid players and, didn't do anything crazy. I think the big thing of this draft was drafting as many times as you can, getting the quarterback at the top, and then just get as many good players in the building as you can. The only thing I think that you would quibble with is the lack of offensive line kind of, reinforcements. I know they got Brandon Coleman in the 3rd round, but that was pick number 5 for them by the time they eventually got around to the offensive line, when they were one of those teams where you were saying, okay, if they get the quarterback at the top of the draft, we're going to circle back around the next couple of picks and get offensive linemen. Though I think there were good reasons for avoiding that in terms of value players falling to their next picks, but it meant that they were late in addressing that offensive line.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing that I've definitely struggled with as an analyst this time around with this team, and tried to exercise some patience and give them the benefit of the doubt almost, is they had a lot of problems. They got here, I think they looked at the roster and they went, yikes, this is worse than we thought. And that means you're not going to be able to fix everything in 1 year. And so how do you go about, I don't mean this in a PFF grades everything. And, we kind of have some fun with that from time to time, as everyone does. You guys have fun with it. I love your podcast open where you have all the people complaining about the PFF grades. So to be clear, I'm not poking fun here, but in terms of grading the draft, balancing that, they did take the best player available with there's this other need, but they had so many needs. Was it reasonable to ask them to fill it anyway?
Yeah. I mean, this is why, on our podcast, we talk about the idea is to go into a draft never needing massive glaring needs all the way through. Obviously, quarterback is a different thing. You either need a quarterback or you don't. But the idea is you want to get into a draft without having glaring holes on the roster that you have to fill with certain draft picks, because if you do that, you've got to take those players and you have to get a guy that you expect to come in and contribute. And that leads you to ignoring players that were potentially better players at different positions. So the alternative is, like Washington, where maybe they would have wanted to go offensive line with the 36th overall pick, but suddenly Johnny Newton's available and you're like, well, he's too good to pass on at this point. So let's come back again for the offensive line later. And then Mike Sanders still is available. So you're like, all right, one more pick. And it just sort of gets kicked down the road a bit. The problem, I think, occurs, ordinarily, I would say that's the right strategy. Just take the best players, come back for the needs later on. I think it potentially changes the math a little bit, though, when you just drafted a quarterback at number 2 overall and the offensive line in front of him on paper isn't good. Suddenly you don't have the luxury anymore of just picking the best players. You need to say what's going to help this guy succeed quickly, or what's going to give him the best chances of succeeding. And that's offensive line, that's receivers, those kinds of things. So I think that's the only time where you kind of question what they were doing a little bit. You're right. They've got needs in a lot of places. These were all good picks, but the most important thing for this team is the quarterback they just drafted.
Yeah, no doubt. PFF Sam Monson with us here on the Hoffman Show. There's a quote that Adam Peters gave somewhere in the process that I thought was always really interesting, and one that I came back to, which is, we're people drafting people. And there's so much talk about the character of these players. And I think when you look at their class, bunch of team captains, bunch of leaders, guy like Sanders still, you can't find anybody that dislikes him. It's hard to find anybody that doesn't absolutely love the kid because of who he is. As you kind of go through your draft process, and especially as you've covered the league now for as long as you have, you start to build sources in the league. Has how you think about that part of the draft evolved at all in terms of the people versus just the tape?
I think that's always the most difficult element to evaluate from the outside, right? Because that's where coaches or teams have the advantage with the one-on-one meetings, with the interviews at the combine, with the 30 visits, all those things that they get access to that the rest of us don't. We can only kind of evaluate, what you see from the outside on tape and the red flag type of stuff that becomes public information. Outside of that, it's very difficult to get a handle on, this guy is an amazing person. Everyone loves him. He's a team leader, versus another guy who isn't, but they're comparable football players. It probably makes a difference, but how much is really difficult to put a handle on and put a value on. So every single NFL team says something along those lines, that we're chasing. Like, nobody's out here going, we're looking for assholes that nobody likes, right? Doesn't matter for us. We're just looking for the best players. Doesn't matter if he's a tool. Doesn't matter if he's great. Don't care if he's a leader. Like, everyone's looking for the same thing. They want great people, great leaders, awesome human beings. So the fact that they all articulate that means there's probably something to it, but it's very, very difficult to quantify. And even they, I don't think, try and quantify it as much as just identify it and say, this is somebody that we should be targeting because of these traits.
Well, so that's the thing that I think for me during this draft process evolved in my thinking is I like everyone else was always like, yeah, you'd rather have the good guys. But I think what I see with a guy like Peters is, and why he ultimately might get revered as like one of the great talent evaluators in the sport, is I think he prioritizes it more. And because it's not just like so that you have a team full of guys that you don't have to worry about getting the call from the local police department about. It's you look at some of the guys that he's taken that have developed at the pro level, and it's about their football character. And like, do these guys have an upward trajectory? Do these guys ultimately become better players? Do we get their best football as opposed to them just kind of being the players they were in college? And I look at a place like Detroit and what Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have built. I think they do the same thing. And that's kind of why I wanted to ask you about this on top of just the players, as someone who watches so much film and has studied so much of this stuff and team building and looks at this stuff in a really smart way. I think for me, that was like a kind of a big revelation this draft cycle of the best teams seem to prioritize that versus just giving it lip service. And I'm curious if you've noticed that or disagree with that in your observations over the years.
I think there's definitely some very smart teams that do prioritize it. I think there's other smart teams and good teams that don't, though. So I think part of it is one of these things of it's almost like looking for the patterns. When you see a good team and they're doing that, it's like, well, this is obviously what everybody should be chasing. I don't know that there's it's that linear a thing that the smart teams do this, the dumb teams don't, and that's the difference. I think it is one of those things that all things being equal, you would obviously rather have the better person, the better self-starter, the better leader, all those kinds of things, the better football character. But I don't know that it should be necessarily, one of the most important things you're prioritizing in all of this. I think it's definitely one of the variables and probably a significant tiebreaker in a lot of cases. But I think there's other elements that should probably be more important when you're looking at things.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably right. The tiebreaker, I think, is a good way to put that, because if a guy can't play, then he can be he can work really hard. I can work really hard at football. I'm not going to play in the NFL. Sam Monson's with us here on the Hoffman Show. As for the quarterback they took, what do you make of the pick of Daniels at 2, the fit with Kingsbury, and how quickly he can become a good NFL quarterback, which is obviously what you want out of a number 2 pick?
Yeah, I think most people at PFF would have sided with Drake May over Jaden Daniels, but certainly personally, I thought it was close enough that I wouldn't even disagree with anybody that put it the other way around, like Washington. I think that's just the way they came down on what was a very close, razor's edge of a decision between those two guys. To me, it was Caleb Williams as the number 1 quarterback, and then a gap, and then the rest of them, and they all have sort of something to be scared of. They've all got traits that impressed you and that you want to attach yourself to. And it's just sort of which one is the combination that you're least scared of or most drawn to. Daniel's coming off an amazing season last year with some incredible accuracy, some really impressive big time throws. Obviously his athleticism is crazy good. But the things that you need to be a little bit concerned by are, does he expose himself to too many hits? Does he take too many sacks, period, just trying to run around and make some plays? And these are things that are vaguely sticky from the college level to the NFL level. It tends to be that's just the type of player you are, and that's going to take some work. The Kingsbury offense, I think, is an interesting element because we need to see what the next evolution of that is. He came into the NFL running effectively, a pure air raid offense, and that lasted like 2 weeks before he was like, okay, that can't fly. We can't run 10 personnel the whole time in the NFL. It doesn't work. The defenses are too different. So he adjusted several times actually in that first sort of year or two, and then kind of stopped and stopped evolving that system to a degree, and was stuck in a couple of things that he wanted to keep doing that were different from the way the rest of the NFL was going. So I'm kind of fascinated to see, has he evolved now that he's had some time off? Have we got new wrinkles to this offense? Has he shown, because he's shown in the past, obviously, the capacity to develop that system. It's not like other offenses or defenses that have come into the league, been really good for a couple of years, and then just never changed, and the league figured it out and it's done. He has shown the capacity to change it. He just stopped doing it at some point. And so I think that's going to be a big element is, number one, what exactly is this Cliff Kingsbury offense going to look like now? And then how does Jaden Daniels do within it?
Yeah. What do you make? One of the most interesting picks, I think, on that front is Ben Sinnott, the tight end from Kansas State, who Adam Peters kind of compared to a little George Kittle-y, but the Kyle Juszczyk comparison is the one that really caught my attention, because that kind of piece, like, obviously doesn't exist in the initial iteration of Kingsbury's offense. There's no fullback or tight end in that iteration, and this guy is a guy that can do both. What do you make of that pick and how it fits with some of the offensive minds here in DC, whether it be Kingsbury, Brian Johnson, Anthony Lynn, anybody else?
Yeah, and yet he's very receivery, for a tight end / for an H-back. He's a real sort of receiver at that position. Like, he actually looked like a wide receiver running around there in college, much more kind of slight than some of these other giant tight ends that were getting drafted. So, yeah, I think he is a kind of versatile chess piece within this offense that can move around and fill that kind of additional large-bodied role outside of the receivers that they're going to want to play. So from that perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense within the offense.
Sam Monson from Pro Football Focus. What's your guys' schedule now that the draft is over? Do you actually take some time off? Or are you going to just dive into more looking back at the draft? What's up for you guys the next couple of months and kind of this football, as dead of a time as we have? There's nothing that's dead in the NFL.
Yeah, we you're sort of so focused on the draft, and you're like, we can just get to the end of the draft and it's all good. But actually, the week following the draft is just as busy, because we do like a daily recap show going through everybody's draft. And then next week, it'll be the first week that it actually cools down a bit. So take a few days off then, and then we're sort of just into our off-season content. And for us, that's some of the fun stuff, right? We get a chance to talk some ridiculous stuff and crazy sort of submissions that people have emailed in, and just random topics that we want to hit over the course of the off season. Just have a bit of fun until the season rolls around again and we start analyzing the real stuff.
Yeah, no, it's a wacky time of year to do, whether it's a podcast or radio show, but you guys do a great job. Sam Monson, just search PFF in your podcast feed. It'll pop right up. He's their lead football analyst. Sam, appreciate the time. Thanks so much, man.
Anytime. Take it easy.
That is Sam Monson with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back here on the Team 980, actually, Ant, question: what are we doing? Because Spiro is going to join us at 6:00. What are we doing next?
We didn't necessarily finish our conversation earlier on the
Knicks and Sixers.
Yeah, the playoffs.
Oh, we didn't really get to the Sixers side of it. Let's do that next. More NBA playoffs until Spiro Dedes joins us at 6 to talk, NBA playoffs next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Our pal Spiro Dedes joins us talking NBA playoffs at 6 p.m., just 9 minutes away. Quick chat now, though, about one of the teams that is out. That is the Philadelphia 76ers, and it's a disappointing end for Philadelphia, and it brings like another era to the end. But I do think that the Sixers' future is bright as long as Joel Embiid can stay healthy. The era that's ending is the Tobias Harris era, which, as much as I love Tobias Harris, is just a brutal era. That was a Freudian slip. I said error. I meant era. But they chose him over Jimmy Butler. And that was a big mistake. In hindsight, there's just no other way around it. A tremendously large mistake by Daryl Morey and the Sixers to leave or to let Jimmy Butler walk and to sign Tobias Harris to a bunch of money. And it's such an interesting thing because if you go all the way back in the process, and like the idea of tanking, getting a bunch of draft picks, bringing in as much talent as you can at the top of the draft, I think they actually proved the theory of the case to be correct. They then messed up the execution of a bunch of other stuff. Like, in some ways, I would be fascinated to see if Sam Hinkie was allowed to continue on, and like, could he have landed the plane? Of course, he got blown out for what's his face, Brian Colangelo, who then got caught in the whole burner Twitter scandal, and then he got blown out, and now Morey's there. But really, like, what's undone the Sixers is missing on draft picks, such as Markelle Fultz, instead of just taking Jason Tatum. They traded out or traded up to 1 or whatever it was when they could have just had Tatum. Or they traded up to 1 to take Fultz. And they could have just traded up to 1 and taken Tatum. However that went down. They obviously, like, Jahlil Okafor was good for a hot second, but ultimately not that good. Michael Carter-Williams, who just wrote a piece for the Players Tribune talking about like how things went sideways for him. Guy that I covered in college and won Rookie of the Year, but then didn't work out. You've got obviously Ben Simmons, who looked to be on his way, and then just it all went wrong. The Harden thing ultimately doesn't really work out. The Harris and Butler decision goes wrong. Remember the Al Horford contract? I loved that thought at the time. Didn't work out. Wound up shipping him right back to Boston. And so what you have is like a proof of the theory that the shotgun approach of taking as many shots as you can works because they still have Joel Embiid. Like, through all of those mistakes, through all of those misses, through all those things that don't have them as a prime contender, never making it out of the second round, they still have Joel Embiid and ultimately Tyrese Maxey because they got something right there in the draft. And they could have another 3 or 4 year window here where if they can get some stuff right finally, they can compete for a championship. But they just messed up the execution of what was a good plan. That they needed, like, it's you can't just hit one part of it. You have to hit multiple parts. And I think it both justifies taking as many bites at the apple as you can while also understanding that you have to at least hit an average number of bites at the apple, and they've probably underachieved in that mark.
Yeah, and I also just think, I mean, you just pointed out all the bad contracts that they, gave people. You talk about Tobias Harris, you talk about James Harden, you talk about Al Horford. I think also just like what we're seeing now is you don't necessarily need to pay all these people $40, $50 million to, build their super team. You just need good players. And I think this offseason they're going to have a chance to, build around what they have in Maxey, build around what they have in Joel Embiid, go get players that play hard, that are going to be able to, work around your superstar. You don't need to add, a third, fourth, fifth superstar because that's the blueprint that it seems to me be failing.
Yeah. So they intentionally didn't extend Maxey last year. So he's a restricted free agent. Obviously, they'll match anything. They'll probably just max him, here. But they've got, by doing it this way, by not having the extension on the books, they've kept flexibility to be able to take on salary in a trade and then match whatever they want. They could just order the transactions in that way, assuming something happens July 1st free agency. So they actually probably won't. Like, they'll go to Maxey and be like, hey, dude, we're going to pay you whatever. Like, if you want to go sign an offer, or like, actually, they probably be like, don't sign an offer sheet. Because if he signs an offer sheet, then it holds up their cap space. And so another team could mess them up. But they'll probably tell Maxey, like, dude, we're going to give you a max contract. Like, we're going to agree to terms, and then they won't sign it until they do whatever else that they do. So that is kind of the plan for them this summer, and why they did it that a certain way, where a lot of teams would have given Maxey the extension last year. They'll just extend him this year. Or not extend him. They'll re-sign him to a new deal. Because they only have 4 players on the roster currently for 24-25. It's Embiid, Paul Reed, Jeff Doughton, and Ricky Council IV. Whoever those guys are.
Jeff Doughton is actually a DMV native.
There you go.
Played ball at St. John's, and
that's why you listen to the show. You learn stuff from man.
Yes, sir.
Everyone else, but like, if I'm them, I'm trying to re-sign Kelly Oubre. He was great for them and has been great for them. I'm trying to bring back, I think, Batum. If he wants to play again, I'd sign him to a 1 year. Buddy Hield, like, I'd consider him at a much lower number than he was. But they gotta ultimately, like, it comes down to, like, if you're paying Tobias Harris $45 million and he goes 0 for 2 in an elimination game, not good enough. Not good enough. So these Sixers have to get a lot more help. All right, Indiana moves on. We will talk about that and where the Knicks and Lakers go from here with Spiro Dedes, who used to be the play-by-play voice of both of those teams. Not at the same time, though, Anthony. Not at the same time. Spiro Dedes from TNT joins us next. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Spiro Dedes set to join us here in just a moment. So looking forward to catching up with the TNT broadcaster. Of course, you also know from the NFL and CBS. He joined us a bunch during the NFL season as he and his crew wound up covering a couple of Commanders games. But we also get the joy of watching him during the postseason on TNT. He was on the call of Pacers and Bucks last night. And Spiro actually also used to be the play-by-play voice of the Lakers and the play-by-play voice of the Knicks. So we will kind of touch on all of the big stories around the NBA with Spiro when he joins us. I think right now, looks like we might be ready to go. Ant, thumbs up. What's up?
So he said he just got the link. He's logging on right now, and then
okay, great.
I'll pot him on as soon as he as soon as I see him pop up.
Okay, so we're gonna have Spiro on a nice clean microphone line, which is excellent. Love that. But it's just this is the thing about the NBA that's so wild, and reminded of that. Really, like as teams started to get eliminated last week, and we talk about all these different possibilities for a team like the Wizards and trades and all that kind of stuff. And then we talk about the coaching search, and then all of a sudden another team gets eliminated and the whole market changes. And it's just a, and are you trying to talk to me or did I drop? It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And it's our pleasure now to welcome in our guy Spiro Dedes, play-by-play on TNT, called the Bucks Pacers series. Pacers send the Bucks home last night. Spiro, how you doing, man?
Mr. Hoffman, good to hear your voice, buddy.
Always good to be with you, man. Appreciate your time, especially on a busy day. I know you were flying back across the country, but last night the Pacers just put it on the Bucks, and this whole Bucks season just felt off kilter. Obviously, the Adrian Griffin stuff. Doc Rivers never really felt like he found his footing as the coach of that team. Obviously, Giannis not being on the floor is the biggest factor in everything because he's great, but how quickly, like in this series, it goes 6 games, but did you feel like Indiana maybe had a level of control over their organization and their team that Milwaukee was lacking?
Yeah, I think you sum it up perfectly. I think it's just the perfect end to what was really a disappointing season for Milwaukee. And, you know, I think if you told people, Greg said this on the air, Greg Anthony, who I've been calling the games with, you know, if you told someone, hey, you know, Milwaukee's going to fire their coach middle of the season, Giannis and Dame are going to miss, you know, a huge chunk of the year, and they're going to lose in the first round to Indiana going into the season. You know, I don't think anyone knew quite what Indiana was at that juncture of the season. They, you know, think you're nuts. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, I think it's tough. I think Doc sometimes is an easy target. You know, he's been kind of a punching bag a little bit with some of the playoff shortcomings that he's had with his teams over the past couple of years. But, I mean, it's hard to really get on him for this. I mean, you know, when you take away the top 2 players from any other team, and what do you got? I mean, it's in some ways you can give them credit, the coaching staff, for taking 2 games off this team in this series. I thought they were tremendous in Game 5. I thought that was purely a win that they got with the coaching game plan with Rex Kalamian, who's become Doc Rivers' de facto defensive coordinator. So I'll give them some credit for that, but really disappointing season. And now I don't know what you do moving forward. I think they're kind of, you know, the fit with Dame, I'm not sure. As much as we all love him, he's one of the great clutch shooters and skilled shot makers that we have in the league. But I'm just not sure that it's the right fit, and I think they have some other needs that need to be addressed. So they have some questions that they have to answer here in the offseason for sure.
No, I actually think, Spiro, to your point, the Game 5 win, I think I saw the stat that it was the first win in either NBA history or like the last very large number of years where a team won a playoff game without their top 2 scorers. I don't know if that you came across that.
100% accurate. Yeah, it was. You know, you get floored with so many stats preparing for these games. You rarely get surprised. I mean, that was kind of jarring to see that. So I think that tells you all you need to know.
For sure. And I am curious, just to follow up on that real quick, and then I do want to talk about some of the other things that are going on around the league. You have a great pulse of it, and especially New York and LA, 2 places where you've called games as the voice of those teams. But when you look at this Bucks team, they had such a strong identity with Giannis and Brook Lopez as the anchors inside of that defense. Drew Holiday spearheading it on the perimeter. Middleton was a really good 2-way player, and that's how they won their championship and were competing for championships. And they intentionally took a different turn with the Lillard move. Do you think that Dame could be on the move again, or can they fill in around and refine some kind of different identity in Milwaukee to not, and I don't want to say waste, but I guess if they don't get back to competitiveness, waste Giannis's prime years here?
I think everything is going to be on the table just based on what we saw this year. And it was a small sample size. I think if I remember correctly, I think they had their full lineup healthy, or at least their big 3 with Giannis, with Lillard, and with Middleton healthy for only 5 of the last 37 games. But when you sign an aging superstar, and now, you know, Damian Lillard is getting up there a little bit in age. Even Chris Middleton now has been with Milwaukee for 11 years. You know, this is what you get. And getting these guys healthy, completely healthy through an entire regular season and a playoff is going to be difficult. So I think they're going to explore everything. I think Damian's contract, could be some challenging, could present some challenges for them. We know of his desire to go to Miami. Looks like, the way Miami's season ended, maybe there's some changes on the block there. So who knows if they kind of revive those talks. But I think it's all on the table. And the one thing I'll say about Drew Holiday, look, I think if anyone has the chance to take either Drew Holiday or Damian Lillard, you're probably going for Damian Lillard. He's been one of the elite players. But I think they had built such an identity with Holiday, and he was such a good fit. They won a championship with him. One of the really rare, I think, two-way players, a rare kind of star that doesn't need shots. That's very rare in the modern NBA. And so I think there was a really good fit there. And sometimes when you're looking to improve, you sacrifice some of who you are, and sometimes that backfires. And I think we saw that with this team.
Spiro Dedes, play-by-play man for TNT, the NBA on TNT, all playoffs long, of course. So New York eliminates Philadelphia last night. And we do it typically on Thursdays during the regular season, Spiro. We do like an NBA tiers rankings, we call it. We do it during NFL season with those teams as well. But it's an effort to kind of thumb our nose at power rankings, because trying to group teams one by one is way too hard and a fool's errand. But trying to figure out like who's real, who's not, who's kind of interesting but not actually good enough to win. And we took the Knicks down out of like our top two tiers when Julius Randle went out, because I just didn't think they would have enough. Watching them now, how seriously do you think they can compete with Boston if they ultimately get there? Obviously, they've got another series before that would happen, but is what we're seeing out of New York enough?
It's a great question. And I was in the same boat with you in terms of how I was looking at that team. And I know the talk of some of Julius Randle's limitations the last couple of years. His efficiency numbers in the playoffs haven't been great. But with the emergence of Jalen Brunson and him getting to a level that I don't know that any of us knew that he can get to, now you start to consider him this kind of a player that he is with Julius Randle. And you thought, okay, this is a legit contender. So when Randle went down, you thought, okay, it's been a really nice run. They bring in OG Anunoby. He revives the team a little bit, but they're still a player short. And that may still be the case because, look, as good as Philadelphia is, as impressive a series win as that is for the Knicks, you're now going to get to a different level. Maybe not in this next series with Indiana, who, by the way, is very good and very dynamic, and they're going to present their own challenges to the Knicks. But if you get to the later rounds and you start having to deal with teams like Boston and maybe get to an NBA Finals and have to play Denver, I mean, those are clear now multiple levels up from where the Knicks are. None of that takes away from what they've done. I think Tom Thibodeau has reestablished himself as one of the really good coaches in the league. Another guy who's been doing it for a long time, who has maybe taken some lumps and some criticisms, but he's showing now that he's evolved and he's not just a one-way coach. This has been a really impressive offense. So, I think it's been a great story. I mean, the Garden alive, that's the place where I grew up watching the NBA and where I fell in love with the NBA, and to see it and to hear that sound again for the first time in a long time has been really, really cool to watch for sure.
So that's actually the follow-up that I wanted to go with you, because, I mean, this feels like a Knicks team that, despite the fact that they're the 2 seed, has already overachieved, period, right? Not like, look, they could overachieve, let's see what they do. To get to where they are feels so remarkable, and New York can be such a harsh sports town. Do you feel like, one, like New York is kind of proud of this team no matter what, whatever that is worth, and two, that the way this team is built, it can still ascend, and that we are actually watching the start of something and not the peak of something?
Well, I think they've overachieved for sure just to get to the 2 seed. Incredible. The way that they finished the season, again, with the Randle injury, having to miss basically the last 2 months of the season, I don't think anyone in their right mind thought that the Knicks would get the 2. So that in and of itself is an accomplishment. But as you know, in New York, if they lose this series against Indiana, I don't think there are going to be many Knicks fans who are going to say, bravo, this was a great year. Yeah, we'll get them next year. It's just not how the sports fan in New York thinks. But all that said, I think there's a love affair brewing with this team, no doubt. And it starts with Jalen Brunson. I mean, this guy is the prototype kind of player that everyone wants to root for. And the way that he plays, the way that he carries himself on the floor, everything about him just screams foundational player. There is, as great as he is, though, there's a thought that, man, if I just, as great as he is, I don't know that maybe you can win a championship with him as your number one. If Jalen Brunson's your kind of 1B to 1A and they go out and get another legit star, whether that's Julius Randle or someone else, that remains to be seen. But I just hope that Knicks fans appreciate this moment. I hope that they enjoy this ride. Clearly they have till this point. This next series is going to be wild. The Knicks, Pacers, all the highlights, all the memories are going to come back, and they're going to flood the zone with all that stuff, and it's going to be great. Again, just watching it from a fan's perspective has been really something, and let's see how far they can go.
Yeah, for sure. Also, just an incredible series for basketball nerds because you got Tibbs and you got Carlisle, who are two of the best coaches of the last quarter century in the NBA when it comes to the tactile or the tactical nature of the game. But that enormous fan pressure then leads us, Spiro, to L.A., where you also used to call games as the play-by-play voice of the Lakers once upon a time. And they fired Darvin Ham today, and it's a bizarre coaching cycle because a lot of people think Ham should have gotten the job in Milwaukee. The timing didn't work out for a variety of reasons. They ultimately do fire Bud a year later in Milwaukee, and then we already talked about what happened with the Bucks. Now all of a sudden Ham's available, potentially to go back, and Mike Budenholzer's on the Lakers shortlist apparently. But before you even get to who lands where, just the problems with the Lakers. Like I think of your colleague Charles Barkley there at TNT and what he said the other day about everyone just wanting to blame the coaches. And a lot of this just seems unfair. I know Charles' criticism was actually more aimed at other analysts, but the substance of his criticism, if you will, and how much of this is player, organizational, coach driven, and how much of this is just, father time driven. Like what do you see when you look at the Lakers and what options exist before them?
I think it's a roster that is top heavy. I think there are holes everywhere. And I think the Lakers, as much as they have internal issues with the roster and how clunky it feels and the reliance on two aging superstars, I think their biggest problem is the West. When you start to look at the teams that they're chasing, Denver certainly, and now the emergence of these young kind of up-and-coming teams, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, my goodness, what the Thunder are building there is off the charts. And then you consider what they have in terms of a treasure trove of first-round picks between now and I think 2027, all the salary cap money that they have. I mean, the Lakers, to say they have work to do would be a vast understatement. And to be honest with you, from my perspective, you can change the coach, you can change the GM and do whatever you want. But until someone really has carte blanche with this roster and they can tear it down and just start over, I just think it's window dressing. Because, look, we all marvel with LeBron. He's doing things that no one has ever seen in this league for a guy his age. But I just don't know that they have the flexibility to build around him the way that they need to.
Yeah, I'm so glad you bring up the Thunder as a contrast because I look at organizations like the Lakers who just have relied on for years the fact that they are in LA and the stars will come. And in fairness to them, they've been right. And LeBron, their most recent championship is because LeBron James decided he wanted to play basketball and live in Los Angeles. But I also wonder what would happen if they invested in their organization in the way the Thunder do, if they built the infrastructure the Thunder had and kind of ran the Lakers like the Thunder run the Thunder. And I realize there's always going to be some differences, but I just wonder, as someone who spent some time there and kind of understands that market, like the feasibility of running your basketball team that way in LA when you have the brand power of the Lakers, or is that actually unwise because they ultimately will, every, it seems, half decade, land one of the five biggest stars in the sport?
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's just a different dynamic out here. It really is. The fan patience. I always kid my Laker fan friends here who, after they missed the NBA Finals one year, everyone's up in arms. Like this is terrible. It's Armageddon. And I say, come to New York. Let me introduce you to some of my old Knicks fans who haven't been to an NBA Finals in like 50 years. There is a level of these Laker fans being a little spoiled out here, and so the patience level lacks for a true kind of tear down rebuild and to do what teams like Philadelphia did, and I know that hasn't panned out for the Sixers, and now what Sam Presti did after You have this first wave of just a tremendous run with some homegrown superstars like KD and a couple of years with Harden and, of course, Westbrook. They had to go through some lean years of 3-4 years of a lot of losing and Sam Presti having to get up at a podium at the end of a year and telling the fan base, listen, we're staying the course. I know it's bad right now, but I'm going to be at this podium in 2 years or 1 year from now talking about how proud we are of our team as we get back into the playoffs. And lo and behold, this is where they are now. And I just don't know that there's that patience level in this market to do what the Lakers need to do. But again, the bottom line is, as long as LeBron is here, he casts such a shadow over this entire organization. And listen, most of it's great. I mean, LeBron is LeBron. He's going to go down as arguably the greatest player of all time. But at this stage of his career, the way the contracts work, the way it works on the floor, playing styles, it's just really hard, I think, to build, to get back to where they were last year. I think they kind of piecemealed some things together in the bubble. They were able to pull it off and win the title. But it just seems like the window is closing here and they're getting further away instead of getting closer.
Yeah, and the thing you say there in the middle about Presti being able to say, yep, I'll be here in 2 years, the fact that nobody who takes the same job with the Lakers can say that confidently means that you've limited the talent pool. So they're never like, if I am a coach and I value, like, if you want to chase a ring, go for it. You got LeBron James, you've got Anthony Davis, and maybe sit them the first 40 games, see if you can stay afloat, and then see if they can be healthy in April and May. Like, give it a shot. I don't know what you do. Figure it out. But if you favor stability, and especially if you're a young up-and-coming coach and this might be your only shot, like, I don't want to go to L.A. I'd much rather, frankly, come, even as bad as our roster here is, I know that Michael Winger is going to give me a 5-year deal and let me play it out for the most part if I come work for him in Washington. And I wonder if the best coaches, the best GMs would prefer a building secure situation versus let's see what we can do in 2 years before we get fired in LA.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you 100%. And I think that's the kind of the neat part as much as it sucks now for Laker fans and for some of these other teams that have gone south. I like the NBA when it's like this, when it's not just the super teams and it's not just the teams with like the 1 or 2 stars, but seeing a team like OKC, seeing a team like Memphis a couple of years ago before everything kind of blew up with Ja off the floor, organically building your team and your roster and your franchise through draft picks, that small market approach, I just think is more sustainable. And man, we're seeing it right now with OKC. They're going to come back next year, be even better than they are this year, and they're here to compete. I think they got a chance to win championships in the very, very near future, if not this year already. It's been very impressive to watch.
It's the terrifying thing about the Thunder is theoretically this is the worst they'll be in the next 5 years.
Yeah,
and they're
exactly.
the 1 seed. Spiro Dedes, NBA on TNT. What's next for you now that Indiana Milwaukee is done?
Yep, we got a couple of days off, and we're waiting to see when the Orlando-Cleveland series ends. So we'll have Boston. We'll be in Boston Tuesday, basically, for that series. It'll either be Game 1 or Game 2.
Well, enjoy Boston, enjoy that series, and whichever other city it sends you to. I hope for your sake, Cleveland, because Orlando in May sounds very swampy, Spiro, and I don't want that for you as my friend, No, all due respect.
Wherever they send me.
Exactly. Hey, you get a nice courtside seat. Spiro, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Craig. Always appreciate it, buddy. Take care.
You got it. Spiro Dedes with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, we'll wrap up the NBA conversation of the day. Plus, I will actually, Anthony, I will throw out the number right now. 301-230-0980. If you have advice for me running my half marathon this weekend, we will also take that on the Hoffman Show. 301-230-0980.
You can.
Hoffman Show. Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 in our groove on a Friday.
It's cookout season, Craig.
It is. Although, I'm like, did we miss cookout season? It's already like go back inside in the air conditioning season. It got so hot. Although next week, all this week did was build humidity. All this week did was build humidity. And then it's going to start dumping out Saturday night. And then I'm going to be run a soggy half marathon Sunday morning. And then it's just going to rain all week.
Next week?
Yeah, it's supposed to rain like every day next week.
That stinks.
Yeah, let me pull this up.
I need to start looking at the
weather?
The forecast. Yeah, the weather a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I definitely am bad about that.
You've been pretty good. You know it's going to rain
on Sunday. It's because we've been looking at Sunday.
Oh, okay.
We've been looking at like, is it going to rain on not on our parade, but our half marathon? And it sure is heck looks like it. And it just keeps going up. The chances of rain just keep going up. Brutal. Yeah, right now we got coming up this weekend, the high on Saturday will be 59 degrees with a 90% chance of rain, most of that in the evening. Then, overnight into Sunday morning, it will continue to rain. Craig will get to the start line around 7 a.m., and his shoes will already be soggy. So 35% chance on Monday, 55% chance on Tuesday. Wednesday, it's going to be 85, so we're all going to melt, and then it'll rain again on Thursday.
85 isn't that bad.
85 is not that bad. Okay. I just don't want it to. It's depressing, man.
Yeah, I feel you, man.
I just like spring in DC is the best. And we got literally. I know you guys can stop tweeting me. I know it's 2 weeks long and we got 2 really nice weeks. But I was stressed out and spent part of it in Detroit. Okay, it was only like 26 hours in Detroit. But I had a lot of stuff going on. I didn't get to go outside and enjoy the weather the way that other people are just like, I'm not going to work today. I've said for years we should have a rooftop studio for when it's nice out. Nobody listens to me. I remember doing weekend shows in like 2016, being like, it is illegal how nice it is outside for me to be inside. Can I just take a microphone to the roof? And they were like, no.
Yeah, I'm looking outside right now. It looks really nice.
Yeah.
Are you going out today? Tomorrow?
I mean, well, I was going to spend a nice, lovely 2-hour run outside Sunday morning, and now it's not going to be so lovely. I mean, I think we're definitely going to go like walk around tomorrow. I don't want to be fully stationary. I mean, off my feet a lot, but not totally. Plus, we got to go pick up our race bib. So,
I'll happily be on my feet all weekend.
Yeah, what you got this weekend?
One of my cousins is having a birthday today.
Okay.
From 8 to 10:30. It's a weird time, but
it's not a bad one though. It's like, I mean, it's a little bit of a late start, not to be a late night.
Yeah.
But then it's still not a late night.
Exactly.
You can still be like, go home and go to bed. You got to catch the second half of Dallas, LA tonight if you want to.
Oh, I'll definitely be locked in. And then tomorrow, my cousin is having like a cookout at a park from 12 to 7. Bring your kids and things of that nature. So I'll definitely be outside a little bit. You know, my nephew's in town as well. So
how old is your nephew?
He's 2.
That's a fun age.
Terrible 2s.
Oh, is he a terror?
He can be.
A little 2-year-old terrorist?
He can be, but, you know, we try to reel him in.
You just got to be the fun uncle, man. You just got to be like.
Oh, I am.
Yeah, you just got to be the one that, like, it's your old Johnny Good Times, your Anthony Good Times over there. And then if he gets out of hand, you're just like, all right, time to go back to mom.
I don't go back over there, brother man.
You either need to change a diaper or to be fed or to take a nap. I don't know which one because it's not my job, but we had our fun, and now that time is over.
Yes.
Yeah, that's being an uncle is the best in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I know parenthood is hopefully coming in the next couple of years for me, and then it's like, oh, no, the kids, I got to do the hard part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Parents sometimes looking like they've been through wars.
You ain't lying.
All right. I don't know what the segment is anymore. Let's make a prediction for tonight, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap up the show. We'll wrap up the week in 5 minutes. But tonight, by the way, holler at your boy.
Yeah.
2-0 yesterday.
Yep.
Didn't want to be. I wanted the Sixers to win. Alas, they did not. Tonight, Cleveland, Orlando. Finally off of NBA TV. All due respect to NBA TV.
Finally.
But they get ESPN tonight. It starts at 7. Who you got? Cleveland closing it out, Orlando to force a Game 7.
So yesterday's prediction, I was rooting for a Game 7.
Which, by the way, I have to get my joke off real quick. I texted Ant this last night, and I feel bad because Spiro made a bunch of really good points about how Doc Rivers deserves some credit for how the Bucks played in the series.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't a good year, and there's a lot of stuff Doc has done that drives me nuts. So we did miss, with the Bucks losing, an opportunity for Doc Rivers to lose another Game 7.
Yes.
He's never won one. He's, I think, 0 of 9 or 0 of 10. Just
Probably
an insane number.
Yeah.
But good job, Doc. Took care of it in 6. It's not your fault. It's not your fault Giannis is out. Anyway, do we get a Game 7 out of this series? Cleveland or Orlando?
I think we do, Craig. If you look at the 2 games that the Magic won, they were in Orlando, and Cleveland sort of kind of just, I don't know, forgot how to play basketball. They couldn't score. They couldn't do anything for real. And also Jared Allen's out of the lineup. I think, last game they barely, won with Jared out of the lineup. Then going on the road to Orlando, where they've just been terrible on the road, I think this one goes back to Cleveland. I got Orlando winning tonight.
I'm with you. I think young team plays better at home. Cleveland's not that, I'm not saying they're not good. They're obviously a very good basketball team. They won damn near 50 games, and, we're the 4 seed in the conference for a reason, and I still think they'll win the series at home. But I think this is going to be a 7-game series where the home team wins every game. So I'm going Orlando.
Okay.
Clippers, Dallas. In Dallas, elimination.
This one's tough.
This one is tough.
Is Kawhi playing?
That's what I'm trying to look up right now. Kawhi Leonard out.
Well, guess what, Craig? It didn't matter if Kawhi was playing. I have the Mavericks winning tonight. They're going to close it out. Kyrie played well all season. They have no answer for him without Kawhi in there. And then Luka, he answered the call. He played very well last game. I think he duplicates last game's performance. They go out here, they close it out.
I am calling for.
Ooh, say it ain't so.
Against my better judgment.
Oh, my gosh.
A bounce-back Russell Westbrook game.
Oh, he has shot the ball
Westbrook,
terribly.
since game one, has been historically abysmal. Just awful. But it's not just that he can't hit a shot. When was the last time Russell Westbrook had 0 assists in a game?
That was last game?
Game 5. He had 0 assists. Russell Westbrook doesn't play 0 basketball games, right?
Yeah.
Like not as in like he doesn't have no impact. He might go 2 for 11, but he'll have 13 rebounds and 15 assists, right? And I don't know that he's going to get the minutes to do that. I think Russ bounces back. He steps up to the challenge. He's such a competitor. And they were just so, like, their leading scorer last time out was Paul George. George and Zubac had 15 apiece. Harden had 7. That's not happening again. Or it will, because James Harden in big games has been historically awful. But I think at the very least, PG and Westbrook show up. I think they make this tough. And I think we're on for a wackadoodle Game 7. What if Kawhi came back for Game 7?
I just think it's too much scoring from the Mavs. It's just too much.
I'd call it a gut feeling.
Okay. Hey, look, if Russ goes out there and puts up some insane numbers,
or maybe
I
it's
will
the
be
law.
surprised.
Maybe I'm going to get law of average. Maybe tonight's your night.
Well, do you want to switch your other pick?
No.
Okay, just making sure. I'm just curious. Just asking.
All right, we'll wrap up the show, wrap up the week next on the Hoffman Show. here in like 6 minutes for us. On your way home, wherever you're consuming the show. Maybe it's already here. Maybe it's on the way for you. Hopefully that's exciting. But it's almost here. It is indeed Friday. It's the Hoffman Show. We're wrapping up here on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Ant, I was just thinking, our guest list this week was bananas.
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Oh, no. I was thinking about something.
Oh, don't hurt yourself over there.
I really was thinking hard.
I mean, one, it started with on Monday. I started the week at Mystics Media Day. So, like, I had done 8 interviews 5 hours or 3 hours before the show even began. 4 hours? I was done at noon. The show starts at 4. 4 hours before the show began on Monday, I'd already done, 8 interviews. All of those interviews, by the way, are on my YouTube page at Craig Hoffman. They are in our instant access tier. It's $1.99 a month. You can afford it. It's fine. You get access to every single thing we do on demand. It's great. You should just go there and do the thing. But we're releasing them as we get closer and closer to the Mystics opening the regular season. Available now for your watching at any time to anybody is my interview with Stephanie Dolson and then Brittany Sykes. Those two are live. The Mystics play tomorrow, so I think I'll drop one more. And do you have a vote on who we should drop tomorrow? I could go Maisha Hines-Allen tomorrow, Carly Samuelson tomorrow, Eric Tebow tomorrow. Those are the 3 I'll give you.
Is Carly Samuelson Katie Lou Samuelson's sister?
Yes.
Okay.
Katie Lou, who I saw on Instagram, won the she's on the Fever. She hit the half-court shot at the end of practice today. I saw that.
Ooh, that's tough.
Yeah.
I think you should go with Carly.
Carly was a great chat. We talked for over 15 minutes. In part because we didn't really talk about basketball for the first half of it because Carly played in London. And so we were just talking about London stuff. Like, hello. I'd like to talk about London. Also, she has signed 18 WNBA contracts.
Dang.
Yeah.
18?
And this one with the Mystics, year 1, is the first one that's a full year guaranteed deal. She signed hardship contracts, like short-term stuff, training camp contracts. She's been the last cut multiple times. She just kept on grinding. Played overseas a bunch, came back, got better. Salute Carly Samuelson. So I think that's a good call, Ant. Carly Samuelson will drop tomorrow morning.
Yes, sir.
On YouTube. That once they go live, they're also on the Team 980s page. But we also had Ben Standig earlier in the week talking draft. We had Sam Monson and Bruce Feldman today talking draft. We had insiders from TCU and from LSU. Michael Phillips joined us on Monday. Just a tremendous week. And so if you missed any of it, you can go back and check out the Hoffman Show podcast. Ant catalogs it all. It's right there, the Hoffman Show podcast. Anywhere you get your pods, as you're driving around, doing your errands this weekend, go for your walk, your run, mow your lawn, whatever it is that you do on your weekends where you might have something in your ears. Good to catch up on that. Also, if you want to just sit on the couch, especially on Sunday when it's raining, and you want to catch up on YouTube, you can do it on YouTube at Craig Hoffman or at the Team 980. Fun sports weekend as well. Also for us Formula One fans, for F1's in Miami this weekend. So the race is at 4 o'clock on Sunday. It's at a human time. They've been in Asia, and it's race is at 2 a.m. Cool. I will watch it on demand when I wake up in the morning. So you got that. Obviously, ton of NBA playoff action all weekend long. Spirit play late night. I think DC United's got a game this weekend. I can't remember when. Sorry. Nats are home, so if you want to head out to a ball game. Sunday, actually, by afternoon, it might dry out, so you might be able to get in a nice, cool Sunday afternoon game. Saturday, hopefully, gets in before the rain starts. But Nats are at home against the Blue Jays, so fun sports weekend. We'll be talking about it all on Monday. Do we have anything for Real Things, Ant?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then it's time for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not gonna be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
What do we got?
Here we go. So, Keon Coleman.
Oh, right. Who is quickly, starting to sketch his face on the Real Things Mount Rushmore, and he hasn't played an NFL game yet. So this was this was behind the scenes NFL Combine. A lot of teams are letting their camera crews in on some of the interviews with, obviously, it's in-house media. So ultimately this video doesn't come out unless they draft the player and they want to put it out. Well, when was the moment that the Bills knew they were going to draft Keon Coleman? Maybe this was it. Probably not, but maybe this was it.
What do you do outside of football?
Chill at the house, golf, bowl a little bit.
You golf?
I ain't no golf. I'm Tiger. Wish he could. I'm not Tiger Woods. No. I wish I could putt and do all that. Them boys out there shooting 5 under. I ain't doing all that. I'm gonna take me 5 to hit just to put it in. But I'm gonna go have fun. It's controlled chaos. You frustrated, but you can't get mad. Pull a muscle on your back trying to hit the ball. So it forces me to stay calm and just swing. Just have some fun.
Honestly, if I'm the Bills scouts, I'm not drafting him because of that. But I'm like, I like that. This is a man who understands that you can't just let your emotions take over all the time. Because let me tell you, and I don't know if you golf, I golf poorly, and it is a frustrating sport.
Yes, I'm terrible.
Yeah.
Really bad.
We should go play golf sometime.
Hey, we need to hoop also, man. Hey, look.
And it's no, we're not
left
golfing.
corner pocket. Yeah.
Much easier than a 5-foot putt. All right, we'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody.